5 people descend to the ocean floor to see the Titanic up close. Darkness engulfed the Titan submersible as it plunged into the depths. Below, the silence was absolute, until mysterious sounds echoed, changing everything. Hours later, the Titan submersible vanished without a trace. A desperate search began as the world watched anxiously. Mysterious sounds were detected from the ocean floor, sparking hope, but what did they really mean? What was the error hidden in plain sight that sealed Titan's fate? Since the Titanic sank in 1912, humanity has never stopped being fascinated by the mysteries resting nearly 4,000 meters deep in the Atlantic Ocean. On June 18, 2023, this curiosity led 5 people to board OceanGate's Titan submersible. Their goal was clear: to explore the Titanic's wreckage and experience something only a select few in the world could claim. But, as we'll see, this quest for the extraordinary came with a terrible price. Before we dive into Titan's story, we need to clarify something important. What exactly was it? Many call the Titan a submarine, but that's far from accurate. While a submarine is an autonomous vehicle capable of navigating on its own for days or weeks, Titan was a submersible, dependent on a surface support ship for communication and rescue. This dependency already imposed clear limitations on the operation. OceanGate relied on the Polar Prince, a surface ship essential for monitoring Titan's mission, an indispensable link for submersibles. The Titan was a bold technological experiment, made of carbon fiber and titanium, without traditional seats and controlled by a video game joystick. It embodied the innovative vision of OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush. But this innovation came with a cost: constant criticism from engineers and experts who warned about safety flaws in its design. And it was this combination of innovation and risk that, as it seems, contributed to Titan's tragic fate. More than a century after the Titanic sank into the icy waters of the North Atlantic, the fascination with the ship has never waned. Movies, books, documentaries, and expeditions continue to fuel this global obsession. As someone passionate about the sea, I often wonder, what makes the Titanic tragedy so unforgettable? Perhaps it's because the Titanic represents a unique combination of luxury, tragedy, and human lessons. It was the largest and most advanced ocean liner of its time, declared unsinkable by its creators. And ironically, it was this very claim that sent it to the ocean floor on its maiden voyage. To give you an idea of its scale, over 100 scientific and tourist expeditions have visited the wreck site, each revealing new details about what remains of the Titanic. But exploring this region isn't for amateurs. It requires overcoming extreme challenges that few can face. Descending to the Titanic wreck is like entering an alien environment. At a depth of 3,800 meters, the pressure exerts a colossal force on anything venturing there, equivalent to the weight of 400 elephants crushing every square meter. Few people truly grasp the gravity of this challenge. A submersible like Titan needed to withstand such intense pressure that even the smallest flaw could mean instant death for its occupants. The irresistible question anyone would ask is, if Titan was designed to withstand this hostile environment, what could have gone so wrong during that fateful expedition? On June 18, 2023, OceanGate's Titan was ready to embark on a mission that promised to be as grand as it was perilous. The objective? To explore the Titanic's wreck, a once-in-a-lifetime experience for a select few. On board was a distinguished crew. Stockton Rush, OceanGate's visionary CEO, was there, confident in his creation and eager to prove that Titan was more than safe. Alongside him was renowned French explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet, famously known as Mr. Titanic. Joining them were British businessman Hamish Harding, always seeking extreme adventures, and Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood, with his teenage son, Suleiman, who saw this trip as a unique opportunity to bond with his father. Each passenger paid an astonishing $250,000 for this experience. That's practically the cost of an apartment. But, of course, they weren't just buying a ride, They were buying the chance to experience something almost supernatural. Yet, a shadow loomed over Titan before its departure. Persistent criticism of its design and safety. Rush, ever optimistic, downplayed the concerns. "It's completely safe," he reportedly told a friend. "It's like flying in an experimental plane." Words of confidence or overconfidence. The plan seemed simple. On paper, Titan would descend 3,800 meters to the Titanic's wreck, a journey taking about 2 hours. Once there, passengers would have 6 to 8 hours to explore before returning to the surface. But the submersible was far from comfortable. There were no seats, just a bare floor to sit on. The only window was tiny, and the control, well, it was operated by a video game joystick. That's right, a joystick. "Seriously, this controls the whole thing?" someone might have asked, pointing to the joystick. Rush would have responded with a smile. "The simplest technology is always the most reliable." Simple, perhaps, but reliable. That, my friends, is another story. The descent began as planned. Everything was in order until about 90 minutes. Something went wrong. Titan lost contact with the Polar Prince, the surface ship monitoring the mission. Crew members aboard the Polar Prince grew restless. "Titan should have sent a message by now," someone said. "Maybe it's just a signal delay," another replied. But the tension was palpable. It didn't take long for everyone to realize something was very wrong. Meanwhile, deep below, silence reigned. No messages, no signals. It was as if the submersible had vanished into the vastness of the ocean. When Titan failed to return at the expected time, an alert was raised. Search efforts began immediately, involving teams from the United States, Canada, and France. They deployed ships, aircraft, and even remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, capable of reaching extreme depths. Military aircraft like the P-8 Poseidon were also used to detect sounds or signals from Titan. And then came the moment that sparked a glimmer of hope. Rhythmic sounds were detected in the depths, occurring at regular intervals. On the Polar Prince, the radio erupted with chatter. "This could be Titan. They're trying to communicate." The news reached the families who clung to this possibility as a thread of hope. 4 days after the disappearance, when hopes were beginning to fade, a piece of news brought a mix of relief and despair. An ROV, remotely operated vehicle from the Horizon Arctic, exploring the depths of the Atlantic, found what appeared to be the remnants of Titan, scattered 488 meters from the Titanic's bow. The ROV's cameras captured images of the wreckage, fragments of the front dome and pieces of the hull partially buried on the ocean floor. But what really stood out was the distribution of the debris. It was scattered in a characteristic pattern of an implosion, indicating that the submersible had collapsed violently. It's important to remember that the location where the wreckage was found is notorious for its extreme conditions. The pressure is overwhelming. There's no light, and the underwater terrain is entirely irregular, full of crevices and uneven surfaces that make any operation a monumental task. In such depths, even a simple mistake can be catastrophic. The news was confirmed aboard the Polar Prince, where the crew received the information in silence. A technician merely murmured, "We found it," but not in the way we hoped. The remains of Titan left no doubt. In mere milliseconds, Titan was reduced to fragments due to an implosion. The hull folded like paper. The lives inside swallowed by the crushing weight of the ocean. There was no time for screams, only silence. But what exactly is a catastrophic implosion? Imagine an explosion in reverse. While an explosion pushes everything outward, releasing energy violently, an implosion pulls everything inward, compressing it until it collapses. At 3,800 meters deep, where the pressure is 380 times greater than at sea level, any structural failure would be fatal, resulting in an instantaneous implosion. Titan's implosion would have released an amount of energy equivalent to 1 ton of TNT, but it all happened so quickly, in milliseconds, that the occupants felt no pain. The structure was crushed with such force that the submersible was reduced to fragments, leaving only larger pieces like the front dome and parts of the hull. An expert described the situation with a chilling frankness that silenced the room. "It's as if the entire ocean decided to crush Titan all at once." For the families, confirmation of the implosion brought equal measures of relief and desolation. Relief in knowing it was instantaneous, without suffering; desolation in understanding. There was never any chance of survival. Among those inside the submersible was Stockton Rush. An aerospace engineer and CEO of OceanGate, he was the visionary behind Titan. His passion for innovation was deeply rooted in his education and experience with advanced technologies. His determination to break technical barriers often put him at odds with safety norms. Rush believed underwater exploration should be accessible to everyone, not just scientists and military personnel. He designed Titan as proof that the impossible could be achieved, yet ignored critical warnings about the risks of its experimental design. "It's safe, safer than flying in an experimental plane," he would say confidently. But, as we know, that confidence came at a terrible cost. Also aboard was French underwater archaeologist Paul-Henri Nargeolet, regarded as the foremost living expert on the Titanic. With decades of experience and over 30 expeditions to the wreckage, he was a passionate historian and meticulous explorer. Nargeolet saw the Titanic as a time capsule that needed to be studied and preserved. He recovered artifacts, mapped areas of the wreck, and helped build a legacy of knowledge about the ship. His presence aboard Titan was an implicit endorsement of the mission. His experience and credibility were enough to reassure even the most skeptical, something that, tragically, wasn't enough to prevent the worst. Hamish Harding was a British aviation entrepreneur and adventurer. Founder of Action Aviation, he had set world records, including space travel and expeditions to Earth's poles. For Harding, the mission to the Titanic was more than an adventure. It was a childhood dream finally realized. He was known for his courage and enthusiasm, often documenting his feats to inspire others to pursue their own dreams. Just days before the voyage, Harding posted excitedly on social media, "Off to explore the Titanic, ready for another challenge." His words now echo as a reminder of the uncertainties that accompany grand adventures. Shahzada Dawood, a Pakistani businessman and philanthropist, was part of one of Pakistan's most influential families. He believed in creating memorable experiences with his family, and saw the Titanic expedition as a unique opportunity for that. His son, Suleiman Dawood, on the other hand, was a university student, more reserved than his father. Relatives reported that he was reluctant to go, fearing the risks, but decided to join as a gesture of love and companionship. Suleiman brought along a Rubik's Cube, hoping to solve it during the expedition. This simple detail highlights the youth and curious spirit of the young man, making the tragedy all the more devastating. Long before the tragedy, experienced voices had already warned about the dangers of Titan. Naval engineers, materials scientists, and even former OceanGate employees pointed out flaws in the experimental design. The use of carbon fiber in a high-pressure environment was widely criticized, especially for its vulnerability to structural fatigue. Carbon fiber, while strong and lightweight, doesn't have the same track record of reliability as materials like steel or titanium at extreme depths. Tiny cracks, invisible to the naked eye, can form after each dive, gradually increasing the risk of catastrophic failure. Despite these criticisms, Stockton Rush remained steadfast in his vision. "If I follow the rules, I'll never innovate," he was quoted saying in interviews. For him, Titan represented the future of underwater exploration, a more accessible and pioneering approach that challenged established safety standards. Titan was not certified by traditional maritime organizations, such as the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, ASME, or Bureau Veritas, which regulate manned underwater vehicles. Rush also chose to ignore standards requiring rigorous testing to certify materials and systems. To him, these regulations were limiting. "You can't push boundaries without breaking some rules," he often said. This audacious mindset attracted both investors and severe criticism. But here's the question. In extreme environments, like the ocean depths, where every variable can be deadly, how far is it worth pushing those boundaries? Well, a year before the tragedy, David Lockridge, former director of marine operations at OceanGate, wrote an internal report highlighting serious concerns. He warned that Titan had not been adequately tested at extreme depths and that the experimental design posed risks to lives. Lockridge also called for regular inspections of the carbon fiber hull using non-destructive techniques, something the company rejected as too expensive. In response, Lockridge was fired. This wasn't the only warning. Several independent experts, including naval engineers, questioned Titan's safety. But, as many of them said after the tragedy, their concerns were dismissed as alarmism. Additionally, the Titan tragedy highlighted a little-known issue: the lack of international regulation for deep-sea tourist expeditions. Unlike military submarines or scientific underwater vehicles, which are strictly controlled by international norms and treaties, underwater tourism operates in a gray area. Curiously, OceanGate exploited this legal gap. By not being tied to any specific government agency, the company operated under its own set of internal standards, something experts called regulation by convenience. My friends, the ocean depths, like outer space or the peaks of the Himalayas, are among the few places where humanity does not fully belong. But that has never stopped us from trying, right? There's something in our nature that refuses to accept the word limit. Take Titan, for example, an experimental submersible, heavily criticized, carrying passengers to one of the planet's most hostile locations. What could go wrong? Stockton Rush certainly didn't see any problems, and perhaps this is where the most fascinating and troubling aspect of this story lies. Extreme exploration, in many ways, is a mix of genuine curiosity and monumental arrogance. We want to believe we can conquer the ocean, gravity, or even Everest, as if nature were just another opponent waiting to be defeated. I'm reminded that in 1996, Mount Everest saw one of its worst disasters when 8 climbers died during a storm. At the time, journalist John Krakauer wrote that, deep down, these tragedies happen because people mistake the mountain for an amusement park. Well, it seems we do the same with the ocean. And what about the impact on science and industry after this fateful accident? Well, I believe the Titan tragedy was a turning point for underwater tourism. Before, the sector was seen as an exciting frontier full of potential. Now, it's under intense scrutiny. Companies planning similar expeditions had to suspend or revise their projects, while experts demand stricter regulations. After the accident, there was a significant increase in public interest in underwater expeditions, but also a rise in criticism about the lack of oversight. It's the paradox of tragedy. The more dangerous something is, the more fascinating it seems. For the victims' families and the survivors in this industry, the message is clear. The desire for exploration must not outweigh the need for safety. After all, curiosity may be a virtue, but it should never cost lives. For engineers, Titan will be remembered as a stern warning. The use of experimental materials like carbon fiber in extreme conditions needs to be re-evaluated. Every detail, from material selection to communication and propulsion systems, will now be scrutinized even more closely. Experts in underwater engineering have already pointed out that Titan's case is a textbook example of a preventable failure. Had international standards been followed, the submersible's design would likely never have been approved for operations at such extreme depths. Many of the world's most reliable submersible vehicles still rely on traditional technologies, such as reinforced steel hulls, tested and proven over decades. In Titan's case, the pursuit of innovation ultimately overlooked safety, a mistake the industry can no longer afford to make. More than a technical warning, this tragedy serves as a grim lesson that engineering is not just about innovation. It's about responsibility, because in the end, every bolt, every fiber, carries human lives. And how can we avoid new tragedies like this? First, it is essential to establish clear international standards for extreme expeditions. Currently, the lack of regulation creates an environment where companies can operate without adequate oversight, putting lives at risk. The voices of science and engineering need to be heard louder, and warnings cannot be ignored in the name of profit or fame. After the Titanic disaster, strict rules were implemented to improve safety at sea. Will the Titan case have the same impact on the underwater sector? I often say, the ocean keeps its secrets, but it does not tolerate our arrogance. This phrase perfectly sums up what happened to Titan. It wasn't defeated only by the forces of nature, but also by human choices, decisions that ignored warnings, disregarded rules, and, above all, underestimated the power of the sea. Now, the question that remains is, what have we learned from this? Are we ready to accept that not everything should be conquered, that some places might be better observed from a distance? Titan was a dream that became a nightmare, and, like every nightmare, it left us awake, questioning our limits and reflecting on the choices we make in the pursuit of the extraordinary. If you enjoyed this story and want to learn about more real stories, mysteries, and challenges from the maritime world, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any updates. Oh, and here's a challenge for you. Would you accept the invitation if you had the chance to explore a place as inhospitable as the Titanic? Leave your answer in the comments, and take the opportunity to watch the video appearing here on the screen. It will also surprise you with another incredible story about the sea. See you on the next dive, or in the next sea story. A big hug.